Thank you, Roz. So I'm Morgan Levine. I'm at Yale, like Roz said. I'm not going to really be talking any science today, but just for a little bit of background, my lab is mainly focused. We're mainly a computational lab, but maybe 10 to 20% also experimental. Most of my work involves biomarkers of aging and measuring biological age, with a focus mainly on DNA methylation, but we also use a bunch of other omics-based measures. All right, so today I'm going to be talking about kind of the journey from the trainee to junior faculty transition, what that looks like, what tips I can give, although again, take them with a grain of salt, because this journey is really going to be different for everyone. So just a quick background about me. So I did my undergraduate and my PhD at USC. My PhD was in gerontology, and I finished that in 2015. And I really benefited from the program at USC. It was an amazing multidisciplinary program, really focused on the science of aging. I got to work with a bunch of amazing faculty and researchers who were great mentors to me. Just a few of them are shown here. And I really think that this kind of shaped my trajectory and my focus in aging going forward. So after I finished my PhD, I moved across town to UCLA in the medical school, where I did a postdoc with Steve Horvath. So this was between 2015 and 2017. I also had an opportunity to kind of expand my network and work with people like Luigi Ferrucci, who is at the NIA, who I continue to collaborate with today. And you know, my focus while I was at USC during my PhD was already in biological age, but moving to UCLA just kind of expanded that and how I looked at those questions. And then finally in 2017, I started my faculty position at Yale. I started as an assistant professor in the Department of Pathology, and I was hired specifically for an aging center that they were trying to recruit for. And now in 2020, although sometimes it feels like it's been longer than that, I have a lab with about 7 people in it, 5 PhD students, a postdoc, 1 research faculty, and I also had a former postdoc who's now gone on and got his own faculty position. So I kind of want to start by just clarifying a few myths when it comes to getting an academic job. So I think a lot of people think they need to have hit some certain checklist in order to be even considered for some of these faculty positions. So, you know, one thing that people think they need is a K99 or R00. I will say that it probably will help you to have this, but it isn't a complete prerequisite to getting a faculty position. As I'll show in a second, I did have a K99, but I actually went on the job market prior to getting this, and it didn't seem to affect my ability to get interviews. Also, some people think you might even need an R01, which is not the case. Same thing, do you need publications in Nature, Science, Cell? Again, it'll be helpful, but it's not a prerequisite. Going into a faculty position, I did not have any Nature Science papers. I had the Nature family papers, but again, you do not need, you know, the highest impact. You just need to be able to stand behind what you do and show that you have some independence, some exciting ideas going forward. You also necessarily don't need to have an impressive pedigree. You can come from almost anywhere. Again, it's more about the individual and needing to fit a mold. I think going forward, I'll talk a little bit about this later. It's really important to have diversity in academia. You do not have to look like everyone else. You do not have to have the same trajectory as everyone else. And I think it'll be important, and people are recognizing how essential it is to have people from different backgrounds, different paths. So a little bit kind of about my trajectory, since I know when I started applying for jobs or got a faculty position, I did not know what it looked like to kind of go from starting a PhD to getting a faculty job and so forth. So again, this is my example. It's going to be very different for everyone. And in some ways, I actually had a little bit of a different trajectory than I think most people. But just to go over this, again, I started my PhD in 2010 at USC. And during this time, I think the best thing I did was learn really early on that the goal is to publish. I know we all hear that, but I think it's really important to make sure that that is kind of your #1 goal, is to get papers out, not just any paper, but good quality papers. I also really took this time to expand my skills. Actually, as Daniel pointed out, it's really good to have good statistics, good computational skills, no matter what kind of field you're in. Those are only going to serve you well. They're going to enable you to actually be able to answer the questions that you want to ask. And then finally, the other thing is I tried to take every opportunity I could to present at conferences, network, meet people, get my name out there. And I think this really helped. So I finished, as I said, in 2015. I immediately submitted a K-99. This was probably too early, and I actually was told by reviewers this was too early. So it did not get funded the first time. Then I actually ended up having my daughter a few months after that, which kind of set me back a little bit, but I was able finally to resubmit the K-99 almost an entire year later, and then I was eventually awarded it. I also happened to submit my first R01 while in my postdoc position, although I didn't actually get it until after I transitioned. I started applying for faculty jobs this summer 2016, went on almost every interview that I possibly could, and then finally in 2017 started my job. I also wanted to put in here that I have submitted grants that I did not get. I didn't even get reviewed on some of them. As Daniel said, it's important to be okay with rejection and know that everyone gets rejected, and that's not a big deal. And then finally, I'm here today presenting to you in 2020. So I think, even though it looks like most of the stuff I did was after graduating from my PhD, my ability to be able to do this stuff was because I tried to put in a lot of work and effort really early on. And I think kind of accelerating that trajectory as early as possible is really going to help you in the long run. So my advice for what really matters, I think first you have to kind of decide for yourself what you want to be, what kind of scientific job you want. This is going to really differentiate what you kind of put effort into during your training. So whether you want to be a faculty at a small liberal arts college, where maybe during your training you're going to want to get more experience teaching, versus an R1, so a high research institution. It also could be different if you are interested in being a scientist at a biotech, which then it's going to be maybe more on the skills that you can acquire during your PhD training or postdoc training. And then also there's lots of opportunities in government, which I won't go too much into because Vida and Ron might go into it a little bit, but opportunities at NIH, at CDC. And I think really figuring this out early will kind of tell you what you need to learn, what things you need to emphasize. All right, so now kind of my advice for what I can tell people that I found to be the most helpful. So #1, choose your team wisely. Science isn't an individual sport, it's a team sport. You really need to have people who are supporting you, who you're learning from, and who are kind of guiding your journey. So during your training, this really comes down to kind of 2 groups, so your primary mentors and your co-mentors. And I like to think of primary mentors as kind of the bumpers in a bowling alley. So their goal is not necessarily to get you down the alley and get a strike. You might get down the alley and hit over 2 pins or 4 pins, but the goal is to make sure that you're not going to fall into the gutters. So they'll guide you, but it's still up to you to get down the alley and to kind of figure out your trajectory. So what I like to think of now also being a mentor is that the primary goals of a mentor are, #1, obviously to train you, to teach you how to be a scientist, how to think about science, how to ask questions. I also think it's really important to find a mentor who can challenge you. So not someone who's just obviously nice, but who can actually make you a better scientist by challenging you, by making sure that you're prepared for challenge and critique as you move forward, because that never goes away. Also someone who can support you. So this is like Roz and Daniel, we're talking about people who will introduce you, help you network, and not just leave that fully up to you and actually try and support you in your journey. And finally, I think it's really important to find people who inspire you, who you can see as role models and kind of model maybe your trajectory or your goals after them. So the other people obviously are your co-mentors or colleagues. So this is kind of the goal of kind of expanding your network, expanding your skills, exposing you to maybe new opportunities, new ideas, and again, just diversifying either your scientific knowledge, your training, and your network. So probably one of the most important things I think people can learn to do is how to sell your ideas. So this goes back to the idea of the elevator speech. A lot of people are really interested in some idea because, oh, this is new or no one's ever done this before. But you really have to step back and think, what's the big picture of the science I'm doing and the questions I'm asking? Because you have to be able to sell those to people. People aren't going to just be impressed because you have some new technique. You want to inspire and excite people based on your ideas. So actually being able to sell those ideas, get people excited about it. And this also requires you to be excited about it. I've seen a lot of people really early on giving presentations where they don't seem excited about their science. And I think, it starts with you getting excited, because if you're not excited about the science that you're doing, then you probably should be changing topics or doing something else. So, if you can sell your ideas, it's going to help in a variety of different ways. It'll help you get your papers published and cited. It's going to help you draw attention to yourself in your work. Oh, there we go. It'll make you stand out in an interview, and it'll also boost your chances of getting your grant. So if you can convince a study section that your grant proposal is of high significance, this is going to increase your likelihood of getting it. So the other thing is, the other advice I have is just do it. I'm not necessarily a Nike fan, but I like this kind of motto. So it's really important to kind of learn perseverance. And I'm not talking about the things that are already easy for us, the fun things. So coming up with ideas, talking to people about science, doing your experiments. These are things that you're going to probably naturally want to do. It's why you're in the field. I'm really talking about the hard stuff. So the things you don't want to do, but you need to do if you want to succeed. So this is writing grants, writing papers, giving talks, especially if you're a little bit uncomfortable giving talks. This really comes down to being your currency in getting a faculty job, especially to R1. So it's really important to push through even when things aren't as fun. So one thing that I've found, writing papers or writing grants is really, I think, the hardest thing for a lot of people. But if you can't do that, you're not going to succeed. So the thing that I've kind of found that's helped me is when you're writing is to write like you talk. So a lot of times people are really slow writers because this comes back to the imposter syndrome, and I'll talk about that in a second, but you really worry about sounding sophisticated, sounding smart in your writing. And I would say the best thing to do is just write as you would talk. So when you talk, you don't spend 5 minutes coming up with each sentence. You just say it and you go on. So the way I kind of approach writing is in the same way that I would give a talk. First, I kind of have an outline or notes, so at least I know what I'm going to cover. And then you just talk. You just type out how you would talk through that. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be stylistic. You can always go back. It's much easier to edit, but I think this has really helped me be really efficient in my writing and making sure that I can actually do and get it out. It also makes it less kind of tedious and makes it easier to just do. So the other thing I think is that it's important to think different. I know it's grammatically incorrect for those of you who know the Apple logo, that's why. So this kind of comes down to two things. So it's important on one hand to be a specialist. So you need to develop kind of a deep skill or knowledge base that's unique from other people, that's specific to what you're doing. Also, becoming a hub is really important. So if you are a specialist in a certain thing, and for those, and aging is actually a great thing to be a specialist in, no matter where you go. As Danielle pointed out, it intersects with so many different disciplines that you actually are going to just naturally become a hub. That's kind of what I found in my position. And you really want to do things that people are interested in and things that will apply to, that people can see applying to their work, because they're going to want to work with you if they can see how your work intersects with them or how you can help them in what they're doing. At the same time, I also think it's important on some level to be a generalist. In aging, again, it's really important to kind of have this interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary framework because it intersects with so many different disciplines. And I also think actually being able to integrate or draw from a variety of diverse fields will actually make your work more innovative and significant. So I think, you know, it is a balancing between how much of a specialist versus generalist you want to be. So this kind of comes back to the imposter syndrome thing. So again, take chances and don't let your insecurities hold you back. I will also admit I suffer very much from imposter syndrome. I'm always worried, oh, my success has been luck or chance and someone's going to figure out I actually don't know what I'm talking about. But you really have to just kind of push that to the back of your mind. Know that everyone else is feeling the same way and don't let that hold you back. So, you know, you don't want to wait to learn new techniques or move into a new field because you feel insecure that you're not good enough to do that. Same thing, especially as you're starting out, you want to be able to reach out to senior scientists and the people you admire. Most senior scientists and really stellar people in the field are very open. They like mentoring, they like helping people. Most of them did not make it there by being a jerk, so they want to kind of pass this on. You also need to recognize when you need to ask for help and not be scared to admit that you don't know something. And I would also say apply for jobs or grants even if you think it's a long shot. So I actually started, usually they say, oh, you should apply for just R21s or pilot awards when you first start out. But I started out just applying for R1s because I figured the more darts you kind of throw at the board, the more likely you are to hit one. So don't kind of feel like you're not ready and you have to wait. And also another important thing is recognizing when your paper or project is good enough. It's never going to be perfect. There's always something else you can do, but you don't want that insecurity to keep you from getting it out and keep you from publishing something. Okay, so just really quickly.
Yeah, you're going to have to accelerate to ramming speed, Morgan.
Okay, sorry. So actually, I'll skip this. Just scaling. This was just kind of going back over what I wanted to say or what I already said, but you kind of got the gist of it. Two more things quickly I want to point out. One, have a life. Happy scientists make productive scientists. Your whole life is not going to be your work, so make sure that you actually have some work-life balance. And finally, especially given the current climate, I want to say again, diversity in academia is really important. We need to recognize that each person will have different obstacles to contend with. And we really also need to think, excuse me, critically about these ideas of the leaky pipe and why we're losing really important scientists to this. And we should recognize our own balances. And as we move up the ladder, we need to do our part to really expand diversity and inclusion because it'll be good for science as a whole. And with that, I'm done.
Super duper. Well, there's a fantastic presentation, and thank you so much. You got a ton of questions and chats on the Q&A, and so I'll just hit one or two little things. I think one of the things that there's somebody specifically looking about computational biologists, and I'll direct them to talk to you in the private chat. Let's see, that was, Rocio Rojo has a conversation to be had with you. People are curious about navigating that transition to the postdoc. How do you choose where to go? So you got your PhD, you're all set, now what? And so what guided you to know which extra skills you'd get, who you would go to with the talent? So any guideline there?
Yeah, I mean, that is a hard question. And I think a lot of people too will look at, you know, what postdocs are advertised. But again, this goes back to the, don't let your insecure, just email some. You know, actually I had 2 postdoc offers. Neither one of them were publicized. I literally emailed those 2 people who I was interested in working with. And don't just send a blank, you know, the other issue is people send these kind of generic emails to hundreds of people, and PIs who get those can tell that it's a generic email. So make sure when you're saying, I'm very interested in what you do, you know, be specific to that person. Tell them why you're interested in working with them. No one wants to read, you know, 1,000 words on your background. So be quick, send a CV, say why you're interested. And then, yeah, I think you have to just figure out what trajectory you want to go in. What are it's most important, I think, to figure out what skills you want to learn during your postdoc, whether you need to pivot, whether you need to expand, and just find someone and email them. And even if they don't have a job, they might know someone who does. So.
Yeah, I think you be guided by what it is you want your research program to look like. What skills will you need? You know, it's really got to be, there is no roadmap. I mean, it's more like a free-for-all mogul hill. People don't actually really have plans, but you migrate to something that you think, you know, gee, I could really do that. That sounds totally cool. And 9 times out of 10, it'll work. And even if it doesn't, there's the other things you can do. So I think there's a lot of, I love your myth busting side, and you got several comments on it. I think it's so important that people are just getting this advice that there's some kind of grid, and if you're not on it, you know, woe is you. It's simply not true. Simply not true. Okay, Morgan, thanks a million. There will be some questions. I'll direct you to the Q&A, and then we'll be open again at the next session.